All right, hello everyone. I'm Sophie Alexander from the Nutritional Wellness Center, and thanks so much for joining me for my talk all about LDL, right? The shocking hidden reason your LDL won't budge and how to go about fixing it. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because this is something I see so many clients deal with, and I'm really excited about this cutting edge research, new information that I've been learning, and hope that it will help you as you're figuring out your cholesterol. But before I jump in, for those of you who don't know me, to share a little bit more about my background, who I am, and how I got into all of this. So I'm the owner and lead practitioner at the Nutritional Wellness Center, and it was really my own health struggles that brought me to this work. I just grew up dealing with digestive issues, lots of gas and bloating, a lot of blood sugar handling issues. Even though I ate regularly and snacked regularly, I just get very shaky. Had environmental allergies. And then it wasn't really until I got chronic arthritic Lyme symptoms in my early 20s that I started to look for answers beyond the conventional treatments that I was doing. And it was all the way back in 2009 that I learned about the Nutritional Wellness Center and actually came here as a client first. Gosh, it was transformative for me, right? Very quickly, within the first few months of care, my digestive system stabilized, stopped having the blood sugar crashes. It definitely took longer for the Lyme symptoms to clear up and for my joints to be doing better, for the allergies to be clearing up. But I was hooked, right? I went back to school for nutrition, got my master's in human nutrition. And when I graduated, I asked the owner at the time, will you please hire me? And thankfully she did. And about 6+ years ago, I bought the practice from her. And it's my joy to be working with people every day, helping them address the type of health concerns that I'm going to be getting more into now. As I said earlier, cholesterol is something, especially high cholesterol and stubborn high LDLs, even with cleaning up one's diet, is something that some of my clients struggle with. And so I think you'll find this information that I'm about to go into eye-opening and an interesting, different angle to explore. So what I'm hoping that you will learn today, and I know that you will learn today, is what's really the real story behind what we label as bad cholesterol, right? The LDLs. Understand more about the connection between the gut and your heart and heart health and cholesterol health. That I don't feel many people talk about at all. Some simple steps you can take to support your body's natural balance with digestive health and cholesterol health, and then some practical items that you can jump in and start today. So we got to begin by reframing LDL cholesterol. In general, it gets a really bad rap. People know it as the bad cholesterol, but is not inherently a bad thing, right? It's produced by your liver, and it's what delivers, you think of it as a bit of a delivery truck too, it delivers the cholesterol to tissues in the body. Whereas the HDL, which is called the good cholesterol by many folks, is what's bringing cholesterol back to the liver to be recycled. So I really like to think of LDLs as your body's emergency repair truck. It's moving that cholesterol around the body, taking it where it needs to go. And it carries cholesterol to tissues that need healing. And cholesterol makes up, the lining of all of our cells. It makes up a lot of our brain. So cholesterol is really important for our body. But the problem is when LDLs become overwhelmed or they get damaged, become oxidized, as I'm about to go into, is where we can start to see some damage happening. But I see again and again with some clients that the LDLs might be high, but that does not mean they have cholesterol building up in their arteries. That does not mean that they have heart disease. But because the doctors particularly really like to see the LDL numbers lower, otherwise they're going to recommend statin drugs. And I have clients who are trying to remain off of these drugs, trying to understand what else the LDLs are doing in the body, and how to optimize the numbers. So real problem was this oxidized LDL. So when the LDLs are fresh, they're helpful, they're emergency trucks driving the cholesterol around the body. But when it's oxidized, then it's more pro-inflammatory. And really combating inflammation is what we want to focus on. So you can think of it like fresh fruit versus rotten fruit, right? It's the same thing, but it's in a different state, and it makes a big difference what state it's in, of how it behaves in the body. So what causes LDLs to oxidize? You want to think of it like rust on metal and what causes the rusting. So major oxidizers are blood sugar spikes, number one. So when you're having high blood glucose, it damages the LDL particles, and that's why it's so important to learn how to stabilize your blood sugar and minimize spikes, which is a whole nother talk. But there are more and more tools now, like constant glucose monitors, to monitor this and learn for yourself what's causing blood sugar spikes for you specifically, because it can be stress levels as well. Of course, so much of diet, right? If you eat something high in refined carbohydrate or refined sugar, you're going to get a quick spike to your blood sugar. Industrial seed oils like corn, soy, and canola oil, they're unstable fats that oxidize easily. And then chronic stress is a big one. Cortisol, one of our stress hormones, increases oxidative stress in the body, which can then cause LDLs to oxidize. Also environmental toxins, so pollution sources, chemicals that are in our air, our water. If you are a smoker, these all contribute. If you're getting too much iron, iron acts as a catalyst for oxidation. If you're not getting enough antioxidants in your diet, right? So that's foods that are really rich in color and polyphenols. That's, if people think of that as like your blueberries, right? That's a great source of a food high in antioxidants. If you're not getting protection in your diet from dietary sources, then this can contribute to LDLs oxidizing. And then sleep, again, a whole nother talk about how you can get healthy sleep and healthy sleep hygiene. But when you're not getting enough or you're not getting proper deep sleep, this reduces your antioxidant defenses. And again, you're going to have more oxidative stress in the body and more oxidized LDLs. But now I want to get into another plot twist about LDLs. And when I learned this, this really blew my mind. I just was like, oh, this makes so much sense clinically, especially for certain clients where I was just seeing what they were eating, seeing what supplements they were taking, and the LDLs were not moving. So I want you to meet our villain, LPS, the silent saboteur. So what is LPS? LPS stands for lipopolysaccharide, and its very simple definition is that it's toxic fragments from harmful gut bacteria. So you could think of it as bacterial debris that shouldn't be in your bloodstream. But what the problem is for so many people, their gut barrier is damaged, right? From chemicals they're exposed to, from foods they eat, from the stress levels that they have, right? They have loose junctions within the lining of the intestine, and this damage to the gut barrier, when it's compromised, the LPS gets out into circulation, and then that's where we see or start to see more problems. So what's wild about LPS and LDLs is that LDLs are yet another way that their LDLs are trying to actually protect our bodies and are trying to be a cleanup crew or a protector of the as part of the immune system, is that LDL cholesterol binds to LPS to neutralize it. So your body will increase LDL production when it detects LPS. And the LDLs are trying to act like a toxin binding sponge. So the higher your LPS is, the higher your LDL will be as your body is trying to protect you. And it's why just seeing an LDL number in a lipid panel from your doctor really doesn't tell us the whole story about what's going on, and particularly why you have higher LDL numbers. So we want to understand where these LPS come from. So It's produced by gram-negative bacteria. It's actually part of the shell of the gram-negative bacteria. And the gram-negative bacteria, when they die, they release the LPS fragments that are a part of their coating. And so if you're having an overgrowth of gram-negative bacteria in your gut, and it come from multiple sources, you're going to have higher LPS levels. So it's something that we really see when there's more gut imbalance, and thus more LPS. There's a connection we're now understanding with more higher LDLs. So a little bit more about gram-negative bacteria. We really think of them as the troublemakers that produce LPS. As I said before, when they die, they release the LPS fragments. And so some of the more common ones, and some of these you'll recognize, right? They're household names, right? E. coli, if you get that from contaminated food. But then some of these other ones, develop and overgrow from if you're eating a higher starch diet, or they predominate if you have a stressed or damaged gut. If you've had antibiotic use, right, they will proliferate. If you have more food sensitivities, then some of these certain ones are more present. If the acidity in your stomach is not optimized and you're not actually breaking down and digesting the protein properly in your stomach, and there's more putrefaction happening there, especially if someone's on drugs like proton pump inhibitors, then we can have overgrowth of the Proteus strains. And probably most people have heard of salmonella. That's aftermath of food poisoning, right? So the issue really is when these overgrow in your gut, you're going to have higher LPS levels. And so then the problem is that the LPS, gets into the blood. So if you have leaky gut syndrome, this is where the intestinal barrier becomes permeable. As I was describing earlier, there's literally bigger junctions than it should be between all the cells that line the intestines. They should be all snug and tight together. But if there's a junction, then these things are going to get directly into the bloodstream. There's so much lymphatic tissue in your gut, your immune system really starts to get agitated. When you have bacterial overgrowth, like I was just talking about, you have too many gram-negative bacteria. It's going to start to move around. The LPS fragments are going to start to move around. If you have inflammation in the gut, your protective barriers are going to be damaged, and there's other ways that LPS gets around the body. And when they enter the bloodstream, the LPS triggers systemic inflammation. So some major stressors that increase LPS, of course, if we're talking about the gut and we're talking about gram-negative bacteria, overgrowth in the gut, we have to talk about diet, right? And these dietary stressors particularly are foods that oxidize LDLs, so they're damaging the LDLs, and then there's more gram-negative bacteria for the LDLs to have to collect as well. So sugar and refined carbohydrates, right? They create the glucose spikes that damage LDLs. I was talking about industrial seed oils like the corn, soy, canola oils. They're highly unstable. Processed foods, all the additives, very oxidizing. Trans fats directly oxidize LDL particles. And then there can be a lot of hidden excess iron in fortified foods or supplements too. And then wheat and gluten are major culprits about increasing LPS through multiple pathways. For most people that I work with, I see that wheat and gluten damages the intestinal lining, and particularly the zonulin pathway, which gives us feedback about how tight the junctions are in the gut. The wheat and the gluten feed harmful bacteria. They create inflammation that weaken the gut barrier. And the gluten sensitivity particularly increases intestinal permeability. And then we also contributed to oxidation of LDLs through blood sugar spikes. And if you're eating processed foods with additives, if you're eating excess sugar that feeds the harmful bacteria, if you're drinking alcohol, which damages the gut lining, or any kind of artificial sweeteners that alter the gut bacteria, these are all things that could be contributing to high LDL levels through this pathway that we're discussing. But then lifestyle can play a huge role as well. If you have chronic stress, there's cortisol, our high stress, one of our stress hormones. We see a connection of how that damages the gut barrier. Poor sleep disrupts how our body is supposed to, through the night, be repairing the gut, repairing key areas of the body. When you have antibiotic overuse, this really disrupts the environment in the gut too, and kills the protective bacteria. If you're using a lot of NSAID pain relievers, this damages the intestinal lining. And if you have a sedentary lifestyle, it reduces your beneficial bacteria and it reduces the overall gut diversity, which then can create more LPS. All right, so let's start talking about some more positive things, some solutions, things you can do. One of the first things you can do is really support the beneficial bacteria in your gut. Support that so that we start crowding out and repopulating, crowding out the gram-negative and populating with the better bugs. So Jerusalem artichoke, it virtually has no glucose impact. It has a lot of resistant starch in it. It's like a tuber. I don't know. I definitely have. My mom used to make a soup out of it, Jerusalem artichoke soup. If you eat more garlic, onions, and leeks, these guys all have minimal glycemic effect, and they are all reparative of the gut lining and help to, clean out things that shouldn't be in the gut. Asparagus and artichokes too are very low carbohydrate, but have a very high prebiotic value, which is when we're talking about prebiotics, we're talking about the fibers that feed the beneficial bacteria in the gut. And then we also have jicama, which it's fun to crunch on. It has a sweet taste, but also is very low glycemic and also has a lot of these resistant starches in it that are so beneficial to feed the good bugs in our gut. Probiotics are very important. There are certain strains that are very specific to strengthening the Lactobacillus rhamnosus, strengthens the gut barrier, and the bifidobacterium actually reduce the LPS producing bacteria, and Saccharomyces boulardii protects against harmful bacteria. So I'm not a fan of everyone just sort of blanketing probiotics and like everyone should take a probiotic, but I'm very much in favor of when key strains are needed or a certain blend is needed for people. It can make a huge difference. All right, we want to protect the LDLs from oxidation. So in this way, we want to get more antioxidants into us. Vitamin E, the mixed tocopherols are important for this. So the best food sources are sunflower seeds and almonds, hazelnuts, and avocados. And I mentioned the polyphenols earlier, and I mentioned blueberries, but green tea is also a great source of polyphenols. Dark chocolate is a great source of polyphenols. Yeah, just generally like the more colorful foods, the dark berries, the pomegranate, things like that. And then there's NAC, N-acetylcysteine. It's a powerful antioxidant. It's a precursor for us to make glutathione, which is an important way that our body detoxifies. And so this can be a powerful supplement that you can take to protect your LDLs from oxidation. All right, and changing up how you cook and prep your food can be significant for some people. Cooking with stable fats such as coconut oil, grass-fed butter, and avocado oil. Really avoid high heat cooking with unstable oils. Eating the rainbow, colorful vegetables, as I was just mentioning, provide diverse antioxidants. Using fresh herbs and spices like turmeric, rosemary, oregano. These are all also powerful antioxidants. And these fiber-rich foods, like the page I was just talking about, that had prebiotic fibers, but in general, fiber-rich foods, some favorites of mine are like flax seeds or chia seeds, but any fibers are all going to exist as natural binders in the gut. They're going to help to absorb and clean out things that should not be there. But if you really want to know what your LPS level is, I highly recommend that you test. Don't guess, right? So there is now a blood spot test called the Wheat Zoomer that we offer at the Nutritional Wellness Center. You order it on our website, and it's mailed directly to your home. And it involves literally you prick a finger and you put the blood drops into a couple spots. And then you send it back to the lab, and then the lab sends us the results, which we will do a consult with you to go over. But this Wheat Zoomer tells us a ton of information, but one of the cool things that it does measure is LPS. So it will tell us your zonulin levels. So it shows if wheat is damaging your gut barrier, and it can give us a real feedback on your intestinal permeability. It tests anti-LPS antibodies. So this directly connects how much LPS is there and how much it can be tied back to how you're reacting to wheat in your diet. It does a complete gluten analysis because there are multiple types of gluten. And so it checks all the gliadin types of gluten to register whether you're reactive. And it tests some non-gluten wheat proteins too, and some gut barrier damage markers. And then it can measure too whether you're making antibodies, whether you have a true wheat allergy. So what's cool about it, it just provides high sensitivity and comprehensive assessment of not only wheat sensitivity, but intestinal permeability. And then it can be an early or very sensitive detection of celiac disease as well. So there's an autoimmune response to gluten. And so it can just differentiate. Do you need to stay away from wheat specifically, but you can tolerate other gluten? Do you need to stay away from all gluten-containing products? And then also, do you have a high level of LPS, which would really indicate high level of gram-bacterial overgrowth, which would then lead to further investigation of what's going on in the gut. It can be really helpful for people who already follow a gluten-free or wheat-free diet, because the immune activity, basically elevated antibodies, can remain in the body for 2 to 6 months after gluten exposure or even an accidental gluten exposure. And we can get exposed in a lot of ways. I mean, I have, heard stories. Thankfully, this has not been my personal experience, but of people whose immune systems react really strongly if they just walk past a bakery and they get the flour exposure. Or actually, the Vibrant Wellness, when I was discussing this test with them, we're talking about an individual who was scooping kitty litter, and the kitty litter had wheat in it. And so they just couldn't understand why their immune system was still struggling so much with wheat until they cut out that kitty litter, right? So you can be convinced that you're avoiding it 100%, but even in the United States, gluten-free products are allowed to have, I don't remember the specific numbers, I apologize, but it's allowed to have more gluten in it than gluten-free products in Europe. So there are just these ways that we get exposed, and it really depends on the reactivity of your own body and the damage in your own gut for us to help us to understand what next are needed.
Yeah, they don't need to at all. Do you know about our sleep trick? No.
Somebody needs to mute.
Okay. So this is kind of what we call the style finder signature.
Okay. Got it. All right. Great. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, so of course, this test is recommended if you suspect a wheat or gluten sensitivity, if you suspect intestinal permeability, right? If you deal with constipation or diarrhea, cramping, nausea, discomfort after eating. But it can also be if you deal with headaches, neurological symptoms like memory loss, balance problems, numbness, tingling, anxiety, skin rashes, joint pain. You have other autoimmune conditions, multiple food sensitivities. You get tired after eating. There's just a lot of ways that uh, this can then lead us to understand what's further happening in the intestines and um, how to reduce the LPS. And so if you're, oh, sorry, I should say. Oh, and so I should say before I move on and just talk about other things, there is a sale happening right now on this test. It's usually $370, and right now it's $50 off. And so when you go to the website, which is nutritionalwellnesscenter.com, and I'll definitely list it again at the end, and you use the coupon code WHEAT at checkout, you'll get that $50 off. And as I say, it's a very easy at-home test, but can tell us a tremendous amount of information. But if I'm going to give you an action item for this week, if you haven't already, I challenge you to remove wheat for 7 days. Notice how you feel. I encourage you to add one gut healing food a day, right? Whether that be bone broth or sauerkraut. If those are already old hats for you, I challenge you to really take that list of all the high prebiotic foods, the Jerusalem artichokes and asparagus, and gosh, I'm blanking on them right now, but they were all those rich prebiotic foods, and start working more of those into your diet. Practice just slowing down, right? Taking 10 deep breaths before each meal, like actually arriving and allowing your digestive system to turn on before starting to put food into it. And really maximizing your sleep to the much of your capacity, right? Meaning, like, if you're just someone who shortchanges yourself on hours of sleep, we want to have you get to bed earlier and actually allow there to be space for 7 or 8 hours of sleep. If you're having trouble sleeping, again, that's another conversation, and there are so many tools that can help with that. And we'd be happy to have you reach out if you're struggling and you need to help debugging why you aren't actually able to sleep. But I really want you to take away the big picture. The LDL is in the enemy, right? Is responding to other problems. The LPS from gut bacteria is a major trigger for elevated LDLs. Healing your gut and we're doing a lot of gut-focused work can naturally balance cholesterol. And so we want to address root causes, not just symptoms. We don't want just to do something to push that LDL number lower. We want to understand why your body is producing that amount of LDLs, what needs to be repaired, and what your body need to be protected from. And so if you have any questions, concerns, please call or text us. This is our email address, and this is our web address, and we would love to hear from you. Fantastic. And I see there's a couple questions in the chat, so I'm going to do my best to open that up right now, see if there's any questions I can answer, but I think it's mostly, there's a link. There's a link to the test right in there. Thank you, Fabiola, for that. And yeah, you're so welcome, everybody. I hope you learned a lot. And thank you so much for joining me. Have a great evening.